I'm Sergeant Mike Reynolds, 39 years old, born and raised in a small town in Ohio. Growing up, the Army was always more than just a career option for me. It was a calling, a path that felt as natural as breathing. My dad served before me, and his stories about discipline, honor, and sacrifice shaped much of who I am today. After high school, I enlisted and never looked back. Over the past 15 years, I've been deployed to places that most people only hear about on the news. Hot zones where survival isn't guaranteed, and trust is earned one day at a time. But despite the chaos and danger, my mind often wandered home, to the life I built with Sarah. She's been my rock through every deployment, the steady heartbeat that reminded me why I fought so hard to come back safe. We met in college, a chance encounter at a coffee shop that felt more like fate than coincidence. She's smart, fiercely independent, but with a softness that caught me off guard. We married 5 years ago and have built a quiet life filled with the little things that matter: a dog named Scout, weekend hikes, and movie nights on the couch. Being a soldier isn't easy on a marriage, especially when the distance stretches for months, sometimes longer. But we managed, or at least I thought we did. Lately, though, things have been different. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when the change started. Maybe when I was deployed last time, or maybe it was before that. Sarah's been busier, working longer hours, coming home later. When I call, sometimes she doesn't pick up. I try not to let it eat away at me, telling myself she's stressed or overwhelmed. After all, she's got her own life, her own ambitions. But the silence when I walk through the door is louder than any words could be. Our conversations have grown shorter, her smiles less frequent, and the warmth that used to fill our home feels like a memory slipping through my fingers. I'm not the kind of man to jump to conclusions, and maybe that's my fault. Maybe I'm blind to the cracks forming beneath the surface. Yet every night when I lie awake, I wonder if the Sarah I knew is still there somewhere, or if the war I fought abroad was nothing compared to the battle waiting for me at home. Some nights I find myself staring at my phone, hoping for a message, a call, anything that feels like the Sarah I fell in love with. And sometimes, in the quiet, I catch a glimpse of something in her eyes, a shadow, a hesitation that I can't quite place. It's like the calm before a storm, that unsettling feeling that something's about to change, but you don't know how or when. I try to hold on to the good memories, the laughter, the promises we made, but there's this knot in my chest I can't shake, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, the life I thought we had is unraveling. For now, I push those thoughts away, focusing on my duties, my team, my mission. But deep down, I know the real fight is waiting for me at home, and I'm not sure I'm ready for it. Since I got back from deployment, the house has felt different, like it was holding its breath. Sarah's schedule changed almost overnight. Late nights at work, sudden weekend meetings, and an energy that wasn't exhaustion, but something else I couldn't name. I kept telling myself it was just stress, that she was doing what she had to, but the distance between us was growing, invisible but undeniable. I started noticing little things, the way her phone buzzed quietly when I was around, how she'd quickly silence it or turn the screen away, the way she'd glance at it with that flicker of guilt before putting it down. I don't blame her for needing her space. Hell, after everything, who wouldn't? But I couldn't help feeling like I was losing her piece by piece. I tried to talk to her about it, but the conversations always ended in half-truths and vague excuses. "Work's been crazy," she'd say, or "You know how it is, Mike." And I'd nod, swallowing the knot in my throat, telling myself to trust her, to be patient. But patience wears thin when the silence between you starts to scream. I began to notice changes in our routine. The dinners I used to cook were often eaten cold or skipped altogether.
The weekend hikes we loved became solo trips for me. Even Scout seemed to sense it, sticking closer to Sarah when I was home. Friends asked if everything was okay, and I'd smile and say yes, but inside I was unraveling. At work, my teammates noticed the distraction. They tried to crack jokes or pull me out for beers, but the weight in my chest didn't lift. I kept replaying moments, searching for signs I missed. A glance, a text, a word out of place. I caught myself staring at her when she thought I wasn't watching, trying to read the unreadable. One evening, I came home earlier than expected. The door was unlocked, which was unusual, and the house smelled different, a scent too sharp, too foreign. I called out her name. No answer. Upstairs, I found the bedroom door closed, and from inside came the low murmur of a voice not her own. I froze, heart hammering, every instinct screaming to turn away, but I couldn't. I pressed my ear to the door, the words muffled but unmistakable. That was the moment I realized something had shifted, not just between us, but everything I thought I knew about my life. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, that there was an explanation, but deep down, I knew the truth was a chasm I was about to fall into. That night, I didn't sleep. The shadows in the room seemed to whisper secrets I wasn't ready to hear. I sat in the living room, staring at my phone, waiting for a message from Sarah that never came. The silence was louder than any confrontation could be, and I understood then that the real battle wasn't overseas. It was here, at home.
I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine between us, that the distance creeping into our marriage was just some temporary rough patch. Every day I told myself to be patient, to trust Sarah, to believe that the woman I married was still the same person who loved me. But the truth was, a knot was tightening in my stomach that I couldn't ignore. The small cracks I'd been noticing were becoming wide fissures, and with every passing moment, I felt myself slipping further into confusion and doubt. That morning, I told my commanding officer I needed to stay home. Some kind of personal leave, nothing specific. The truth was, I needed time to think, to figure out what was going on beneath the surface of this life I'd spent so long building. When Sarah came home that evening, she was late again, and I was waiting, heart pounding in my chest, hoping that maybe today she'd meet my eyes and tell me what was wrong. But as she walked in, the way she avoided my gaze made it clear that whatever she was holding inside, it wasn't something she was ready to share. I watched her carefully as she moved around the kitchen. The casual motions of pouring herself a drink and setting down her bag, somehow hollow, as if she was going through the motions of a life that no longer included me in the same way. When she finally sat down at the table, her hands were trembling, fingers twisting around the rim of her glass, and I sensed the storm beneath the surface, words she couldn't say, feelings she was trying to push away. I swallowed the lump in my throat and asked her gently, "Is there something you want to tell me? Something I should know?" She looked away, biting her lower lip, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. "I'm just stressed," she said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "Work's been overwhelming, and I don't know how to handle it sometimes." I wanted to believe her. I really did, but the way her eyes flickered, avoiding mine, told a different story. She was holding something back, and no matter how hard I tried to be patient, my mind kept circling back to the unknown. Later that night, after she'd gone to bed, I found myself sitting on the couch, the room bathed in the soft glow of the TV, but I wasn't really watching anything. My eyes kept drifting to her phone on the kitchen counter, the little screen glowing in the dark, buzzing quietly. I felt a pull I couldn't resist and reached over to check the messages, telling myself I just needed to understand, to find some clue that would explain the growing distance between us. The screen lit up, showing a message from a contact saved simply as J. It was a casual text, something about meeting up later, nothing overtly suspicious, but enough to send a shockwave through me. My heart slammed against my ribs, and a flood of questions rushed in all at once. Who was Jay? Why did she hide these messages from me? Was this just a friend from work, or was there something deeper I hadn't been aware of? I stared at the phone, feeling like I was on the edge of a cliff, about to fall into a void I wasn't prepared to face. The next days were a haze. I found myself watching Sarah more closely than ever before, noticing the small things, the way she answered calls in another room, the way her eyes flicked to her phone whenever it buzzed, the way she guarded her schedule like it was a secret code only she could read. One evening, I waited up, heart racing, ears straining to catch the sound of the front door. She came in well past midnight, exhausted, the tired slump in her shoulders telling me she'd been somewhere important, somewhere she wasn't telling me about. When I asked where she'd been, she shrugged and said, "Just with some friends from work." But that smile was thin, and it didn't reach her eyes. I felt a punch to the gut, the sting of betrayal cutting deeper than any wound I'd sustained overseas. I kept hoping I was wrong, that this was all some misunderstanding, a blip in our lives that we could fix. But every lie, every secret, chipped away at the foundation of trust I'd built around us. I was drowning in silence, a suffocating quiet that screamed louder than any confrontation ever could. And still, despite everything, I held on to a fragile hope, a hope that maybe, somehow, we could find a way back to each other. But deep down, I was terrified that I'd already lost her to something I couldn't fight. I began to notice changes not just in Sarah, but in myself. The restless nights grew longer, my mind racing with images and possibilities. I found it harder to focus at work, my teammates shooting concerned glances my way, but I couldn't tell them what was tearing me apart. The soldier inside me was trained to face enemies head-on, to confront danger without hesitation. But this was a different kind of war, a war fought in shadows and silence, with wounds that bled unseen. One afternoon, while Sarah was out, I took a closer look through her phone, feeling a surge of guilt with every swipe, but driven by a desperate need to know the truth. There were messages from Jay, flirtatious, casual, too frequent to just be friendly. Photos exchanged, inside jokes, plans made for nights without me. The realization hit me like a freight train. The Sarah I thought I knew was hiding a side of herself I'd never been invited to see. The betrayal wasn't just a moment, it was a life lived in parallel, a secret world built right under my nose. That night I confronted her. The conversation was raw, painful, and unlike any battle I'd ever faced. She didn't deny it, didn't try to explain away the lies. Instead, tears streamed down her face as she admitted the affair, the loneliness she felt while I was away, the guilt that tore her apart. I felt like I was falling apart too, heart shattered, trust broken, love transformed into something unrecognizable. I didn't know if we could survive this, if there was a way back from the abyss. But in that moment, I realized the war I fought overseas was nothing compared to the battle at home, the fight to salvage what was left of us or to find the strength to walk away. And so, here I am, caught between love and betrayal, duty and despair, trying to figure out what comes next when the person you trusted most becomes the one who breaks you.
After that confrontation, the house felt like a battlefield where every corner held memories tinged with pain. Sarah and I tried to navigate the fragile truce between us, but the weight of what happened hung heavy, like smoke lingering long after a fire's gone out. She apologized often, her voice trembling with remorse, but I wasn't sure apologies could stitch the holes torn in my trust. I spent nights wrestling with anger and grief, questioning everything about our years together. I wondered how someone you love so deeply could carry such a secret, and why they'd choose to betray the very foundation of your bond. At the same time, I grappled with my own failings, the long deployments, the missed birthdays, the silence I sometimes wrapped myself in, thinking I was protecting us. Maybe, I thought bitterly, my absence made room for her loneliness. I started avoiding her gaze.
afraid of the questions burning behind her eyes, and yet desperate for a sign that we could rebuild. The tension filled the space between us, heavy and suffocating. Friends and family noticed the change, the way I flinched when Sarah's name came up, the guarded way we spoke in front of others. I felt isolated, trapped between loyalty to my marriage and the crushing weight of betrayal. Work became my refuge, a place where I could lose myself in the routine and the camaraderie of my unit. But even there, my mind drifted, haunted by scenes of what I'd discovered and what might come next. Slowly, Sarah tried to reach out. Small gestures, tentative conversations, moments of honesty that felt like fragile bridges over turbulent waters. I wanted to believe in those bridges, but fear and hurt held me back. One evening, she brought home a photo album, dusty and worn, filled with snapshots from happier times. She placed it on the coffee table and said quietly, "Maybe this can remind us of what we had." I ran my fingers over the pictures, smiling faces, vacations, the day we got married, and felt a strange ache, a mix of nostalgia and sorrow. It was a reminder that love isn't simple or perfect, but complicated and messy. I didn't know if we'd find our way out of the darkness, or if this chapter was the beginning of the end, but I knew one thing for sure: the road ahead wouldn't be easy, and whatever happened, my life had been changed forever.
Time didn't magically heal the wounds Sarah and I carried. It stretched them out, raw and persistent, like an open sore that refused to close. Every day felt like walking on a tightrope, balancing between hope and despair. We kept trying to piece together what had been shattered, but the cracks were always there, visible beneath every smile, every touch. Some nights we talked, brutally honest and vulnerable, exposing fears and regrets that had festered in silence for too long. Other nights, the silence was heavier than words, the space between us echoing with everything left unsaid. Forgiveness was the hardest part. Not just forgiving Sarah for what she'd done, but forgiving myself. Forgiving myself for the times I was emotionally absent, for the long stretches away on deployment, for the moments I failed to see the distance growing between us, and for believing love was unbreakable. It was a bitter pill to swallow, realizing that love isn't just about loyalty or promises, but also about confronting uncomfortable truths and painful growth. Slowly, painfully, we took the first steps toward healing. Couples therapy wasn't a magic fix, but it cracked open the door to conversations we'd avoided for years. Sitting in that sterile office, talking about our failures, our fears, and our hopes felt foreign and terrifying, yet strangely freeing. I began to understand the loneliness Sarah had felt, the emotional gap that stretched wide when I was away, physically and emotionally. It didn't excuse what she did, but it helped me see her as a complex woman struggling just like I was, caught between duty and desire, love and loneliness. Still, the scars remain. Trust isn't rebuilt in a day or even a year. It's a slow, fragile process filled with setbacks and small victories. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, I catch myself questioning whether the Sarah I knew is still there beneath the hurt and the secrets. I wonder if I'm holding on to a memory, or if we can truly build something new from the ashes. But I choose to believe in us. I hold on to the fragile hope that love, real love, can survive even the deepest betrayals, that it can be reborn in honesty and effort. I don't know what the future holds, whether we'll find our way back to each other or drift apart into strangers, but I know that living in bitterness or denial isn't an option. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about resilience, about facing the darkest parts of yourself, the pain and anger and doubt,
and still choosing to fight for something better, for a chance at redemption and growth. Maybe that's the hardest battle of all, learning to forgive, to rebuild, to love again when everything feels broken. And as much as it hurts, it's the battle I'm willing to fight, for Sarah, for us, and for whatever future we might still have together.